Hello everybody and welcome to Parks Bros. It's Drew here and thank you for joining me on the third day of Listmas 2020. Now today we don't have any special guests, so it's just me, so I hope you're okay with that. But today we're going to be talking about my top 10 favorite inversions. Now inversions, if you didn't know, are moments when you're upside down on a ride or roller coaster, and for this list today, we're specifically going to be talking about those inversions on coasters. So without further ado, let's head to my number 10. Coming in at this spot, we head to Buena Park, California for Knott's Berry Farm's own Montezuma's Revenge. Now, Montezuma's Revenge, if you didn't know, only has one inversion, and that is a classic vertical loop. So you might be wondering, why does this make the top 10? There are so many other cool and amazing things that are so much more advanced and give more interesting experiences. Well, here's the thing though. This one, you can go backwards through. That's right. With Montezuma's Revenge, you go forwards through the loop and then backwards, which just gives this loop an edge. Now, this inversion is super forceful at the bottom and can give some crazy hang time depending on where you are in the seats at the top. So I had to put this on my list. It's one of my favorite inversions of all time and is easily one of my favorite vertical loops too. Now moving on to number 9, we head just a little bit north to Six Flags Magic Mountain for Full Throttle's vertical loop. Now this loop is massive, and at one point it was the tallest in the world at 160 feet tall. Now that's not all. It also has track that's on the top side, which means you'll be traversing this loop technically twice throughout the ride while going forward both ways. But talking about the loop in specific, this thing is just pure hang time city once you get to the top, and it makes you feel like you're dangling for what feels like forever. With only a lap bar and shin restraint, it gives you a real fear of falling out, and that's why I love it. It is just fantastic and is easily one of my favorite parts of the ride. Now, we're moving to number 8, all the way to the great state of Ohio, to Cedar Point for Steel Vengeance's Twisted Snake Dive. Now, this is the second inversion that you experience out of 4 on this coaster, and it's really unlike the others. The other 3 are twisting 0G rolls, whereas this is more like a cutback, meaning that you twist one way to get upside down, and then after you're upside down, you twist out the same exact way. Now, this creates some crazy side-to-side motion, especially near the final parts of it. And of course, there is some gnarly hang time that you experience too, but my favorite part about this element is the insane whip that you feel going side to side and upside down, straight back up to right side up. Moving on to number 7, we're going to go to another RMC, but this time in Texas to Six Flags Fiesta Texas for Iron Rattler's 0G roll. This is the only inversion on this coaster, but I gotta say, it is easily one of the best 0G rolls I've ever experienced. Now, I will say sitting on the left side of the train will help your experience a little bit, but this one element really excels at making you feel like you're floating out of your seat while pushing you to the side constantly. So you get great laterals and a great moment of weightlessness that really just becomes unforgettable. And I won't lie to you, originally this was not one of my favorite inversions, but after my last couple rides, I gotta say it's jumped up immensely. Now we've made it to number 6, where we're going back to Ohio and back to Cedar Point for GateKeeper's Wing Over Drop. Now I know some might not say this is an inversion, but I definitely think it is. It feels like one, it looks like one, and it definitely acts like one, so I think it's an inversion. But the cool thing about this ride is that it starts off with this element. That's right, the moment you leave the lift hill, you immediately turn upside down into this wing over drop, and if you're sitting in the front, you can get crazy hang time and make it feel like there is nothing between you and the ground hundreds of feet below. But if you're in the back, you get insane whippage that you can't get anywhere else. So I love the variable experience on this element, and that's why I would say it's probably my favorite inversion in the whole park. But now we're going to California for more Six Flags Magic Mountain, which I would say is the park if you want to experience inversions, especially when we get talking about this inversion in specific, and that is the pretzel loop on Tatsu. Oh my goodness, this is one of the most intense moments on any ride I've ever experienced. First of all, to be in the laying down position head first is unlike anything you can find in the rest of Southern California. Now add that in with diving head first toward the ground before laying on your back and then back to the starting position again. It's just something that's unheard of. Now we can't forget this is also the biggest element of its kind, and it really shows off in its positive forces. And out of all of the elements that I have on this entire list, I think this is probably the most intense, especially in positive G forces. Now, maybe not technically, but because of that laying down position that you're in, you feel it a heck of a lot more than any other inversion on this list. And the only reason it's not up a little higher is because there is a little bit of joltiness at the bottom of this element now. But man, it is still a fantastic moment that you cannot miss. Well, now we're moving to number 4 and we're staying at the same park. That's right. We're moving just a little bit of ways over to X2. Now, this one is kind of difficult to say whether there are inversions or not because X2 is a 4D coaster and you're constantly flipping over and over again. But technically there is 2 inversions, and those are the Raven turns, because that's where the track itself inverts. And for me, I gotta say, number 4 is that second Raven turn near the very end of the ride. This is what a lot of people think is the worst moment on this coaster, and I can understand why. It has quite the rough patch, and we're talking about one of probably the roughest moments I've ever experienced on a coaster, but in addition to that, it is one of the most intense moments on a coaster I've ever experienced in a way that's really hard to describe. If you thought it was hard trying to describe Tatsu's pretzel loop, this one is just on a whole different level. And boy, oh boy, in the back especially, it gives you a feeling unlike I've ever experienced before. The second Raven turn makes it feel like it is literally trying to throw you into the ground head first. Not like Tatsu, where you're slowly gliding down like you're on an elytra in Minecraft. This element is literally like you are a football being spiked in the end zone after a touchdown. It is just insane. Add that in with the whipping feeling that you have immediately before and after that, it is just a 3-second period of feeling like you are going to die. And that's why I've really begun to love it. Even though this used to be my least favorite element on the ride, it has slowly jumped up to my favorite. And man, I'll tell you, it takes a while to get used to it. Moving to number 3 now, we're still at Six Flags Magic Mountain. That's right, 4 of the coasters so far have inversions at Six Flags Magic Mountain that are on this list, but we're moving over to Twisted Colossus for the Top Gun stall, which I gotta say is easily one of my favorite inversions and moments on that ride, period. This is a moment when you're on the second half of the coaster, or the green side as we lovingly call it, where you're suspended upside down above another racing train below you. Now, of course, Twisted Colossus is made to duel, but even on those times where you're not dueling, you will get insane hang time that just makes you float out of your seat upside down, and it is just pure bliss. And for the longest time, this was easily my favorite inversion on any coaster or anything, period, because this is the inversion I would definitely associate with the word bliss more than any other. But it just puts you in a position that's unforgettable, especially when you have dueling friends on the train right below you. Now moving to number 2, we've got another RMC, and we're heading up to Six Flags Discovery Kingdom for Joker for the Step Up Underflip. I know, right? Kind of a weird one. But for some reason, whenever I've ridden this ride, this has easily become one of my favorite inversions of all time. There is something about that twisting motion after this amazing drop that made me fall in love with this element. Add in a bit of hang time too, and have it turn perfectly into a swooping dive into another amazing inversion in that stall. I mean, it is just near perfect to me. Now, I know a lot of people think that the stall immediately after is a much better element, and I completely understand that. But for me, I haven't really experienced anything quite like a step up underflip before, and for some reason, I'm just infatuated by this element, and I can't get enough of it whenever I ride. Now we're moving to number 1, to a state that I don't mention too often, but I visited it once and got to visit Lagoon, where this inversion is, and it's on Cannibal. But remember how I said Lagoon was the park? Well, the park lovingly named it after the park itself. This is Cannibal's Lagoon Roll. Now, while many inversions on this list provide amazing hang time, or extreme forces, or roll you over in more ways than a Disneyland pretzel, the Lagoon Roll is just insane. It comes immediately after the mid-course brake run, which slows you down to a crawl before putting you into 2 heartline rolls that are as slow as can be and make you literally feel like you are going to fall out. Now, if it was just the first roll, this would definitely be on the list, but having that second roll included just puts it over the top for me. And this is easily my favorite element of the ride, although that 116-degree drop is very close in second place. But man, the Lagoon Roll is just insane to me, especially with how slow you go through it and how much hang time you get. It just feels like it happens for an eternity, and I will never, ever forget that. But there you have it. Day 3 is all done for Listmas, and I hope you guys have really enjoyed me talking about my top 10 inversions on coasters. Make sure to let me know your favorite inversion down in the comments below. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. And of course, if you haven't, make sure to subscribe because we have another 9 days of Listmas yet to come. And that means more special guests and a couple of surprises and maybe some bonus videos to come out until then. But I wanted to say thank you so much for watching yet again. It means the absolute world. And until tomorrow, with my top 10 park foods list, we'll see you on the next ride.